So now let's talk about the ways we manage source control or source management. And there are two ways that have been used across the last 30 years, and those two ways are a central repository, or a repository that is the master and it controls everything, and then a distributed repository design, which means that we have the repository spread out across multiple locations. So let's start off with the central repository. So central repository are systems like Subversion, or SVN is what it's normally called. And Subversion was actually used for a really long time up until Git became extremely popular, which is a distributed version. So in a central repository method, we have one repository. It's sitting up in the cloud, or it is sitting on a local server, and that repository is the central master. In other words, it keeps a record of everything. It is the only record, and every single piece of source is pulled down by the developers from that central repository, and all changes are pushed back up to that central repository by the developers. In SVN, again, that central repository method, what happens in that is usually we are tracking version changes to a specific file. So when a developer checks out a file that they're going to be working on, a piece of source code, they'll make changes to that file, and then when they commit, the repository will track a change to that specific file. Now this is the way it was done for quite a while until we came up with a distributed version. And so the distributed version, how it works is the repository, or the master record of the source that you're trying to manage, it sits on a server, sits in the cloud, or sits on a local server. And when a developer wants to edit that code, instead of checking out an individual file, what they do is they actually check out the entire repository to their local machine. And what this does is it puts a copy on the remote server that you can use as a master copy in case something happens. But then you also have exact copies of that repository on every single developer's machine, which means if the primary server that's holding everything actually fails, you still have a copy of the entire repository, all of the history of the source changes on each and every single software developer's machine. Oh, those are the methods of source management.